You guys, I cannot overstate just how much I need it. Look at this. Look at this. What is this chaos bullshit? What is happening? Why? It's fine. I'm getting a haircut in 10 days. It's going to be great. But until then, you're going to have to deal with Polly Walnuts. That's just reality. Luckily, there's a black backdrop. Anyway, what's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of Full Blast. Excited for this one. Oh, let's get the camera out. Get the shoes out of the shot. So we're talking about the call is coming from inside the house. And so to contextualize this a little bit, I want to refer back to this past week's classes, videos in the class, right? Not the ones that are on YouTube. Really, like all four of them were very, very good. I did not agree. So I did not agree with Dave's 3 truths. I should fucking hope not, because they're Dave's 3 truths and not mine. But regardless, all 4 of them were really, really good. If you are in the class, I highly recommend you watch this last chunk of Q&As. It's the one between Hoda Kotb and Bernie Sanders. Again, for those of you who are watching this later, it talks about last animal in life problems, the 4 fears, 4 human needs sort of thing. Dave's 3 truths, and Shan talking about depression. And I was just like, man, y'all fucking killed it this week. Like, this is the content that I am here for. Because it was a really nice blend and balance of the science-y part side of OP, and also just how that maps onto this larger framework of personal growth and human development and deepening sense of self and connection with others, which is, my philosophy about OP. And the reason that I have stuck with it that long, I don't think this is a secret. I do not now, nor have I ever cared about the science side of OP. I just don't give a shit. Maybe at some point down the line when it gets for real codified, maybe. But at least for right now, I am vastly more interested in understanding the parts as an analogy framework within which to talk about these larger, more universal human issues. Whether it is blast last, right? There are a lot of layers to being blast last. I'm going to pick on the ENFPs who are blast last just because, weirdly, for a number of reasons, all of which make sense to me if I actually take a second to think about it. There are just a lot of blast last EPs in my life. Or if they're not blast last, then their blast is very demon and they have not worked on it and they are very all in on their NEFI, right? Just as an example. And so being able to look at that behavior and being able, even if I'm wrong, to be able to go, okay, right, I see where your imbalance is coming from, and your disrespecting of the ST comes from an overabundance of NF in this moment. So how do and then I can actually respond to that. I can either fill in the gap. I can either fill in the ST gap. I can match their NF energy. I can not be their friend anymore. There are a million things that I can do in response to observing a pattern of behavior from somebody else, right? I made a video a little bit ago about how my dad is not an ENFP. He is an ESFP and a double masculine one at that. And then a million fucking things clicked into place about our whole relationship. But that didn't affect my feelings for him, as his son and him as my father and our relationship and this and that. Getting the parts right didn't matter. What was important is that I was able to recognize Right. He is a lead consume blast last EP that is going to create certain issues in his life that are very, very different from my issues as someone who is a lead blaster IJ with consume third, right? So it's not even like we could meet each other in that, like, well, we're both energy dominant. We both can do play and sleep together. So, like, we can, you have the lead consume, I have the lead blast, but we meet each other in the middle with that. It's like all the parts are different, but all of the parts are also the same because we're both in the gamma quadrant, right? Whatever it may be. That's all fake. It doesn't fucking matter. What I want to talk about in this video, and in the context of all of the videos from this past week in the class, is this idea of the call is coming from inside the house. So there are a million different origins of this. According to Wikipedia, it started out as an urban legend in the 60s. It was then made into a movie called When a Stranger Calls in the 70s. It has like this legendary, phenomenal 20-minute opening, and that's really what people remember about it. That opening was stretched into a feature-length movie that came out in the 2000s. I think 2006 is what it said. I don't know. I didn't fucking see it. It looked terrible. And apparently it was terrible, but like the premise of the call is coming from inside the house is you have a babysitter and the kids are sleeping upstairs and the babysitter is downstairs watching TV, waiting for the parents to come home, and she gets a call and it's like, have you checked on the children? Click. Oh, that's weird. Must be a prank caller. And then the prank caller keeps calling, and she's like, this isn't funny. I'm going to call the police. If you call this one more time, I'm going to call the goddamn police. Right? Then the person calls again, and then she calls the police, and she's like, I keep getting these phone calls. Somebody is harassing me. I'm babysitting. I'm scared. I'm alone. Somebody keeps asking me to check on the children. I'm worried. Where is this call coming from? And then police trace it and they say, ma'am, I'm sorry, but the call is coming from inside the house. Bah! It's right. They did an homage to it in Scream. Like, it's a very famous urban legend opening, but it gets me every time, man. I don't know why. It fucking gets me. I love it. Even when I know, even just then, like, I knew the twist was coming because I'm the one who was telling the story, and I still got very excited about it. I don't know. I love it. I love it. But I love it in the context of OP as well, and in talking about personal growth, because I think it's really important to understand what calls are coming from inside the house. I'm gonna get some coffee throughout this video, just so you know. So I think about this. I've been thinking about this concept a lot. And I've been thinking a lot about it in the context of responsibility, which I very, very much believe in, and systemic oppression, which I also acknowledge is very, very real. And I'm like, okay, well, how do you actually reconcile that? How do you hold these two ideas in your head? One saying systemic oppression is very, very real and needs to be addressed, and also understanding it is ultimately entirely on you and your responsibility to make your way in the world and to do what you need to do and to not accept a victim mindset. So I want to sort of break down how I came to be able to hold these two ideas in my head over the last, honestly, 2 years is probably what has taken me to like really see a lot of things start to gel, removing myself from a number of different situations, being able to just get more triangulation. Honestly, even on the thing that I held sacred of like systemic oppression is super, super real, being outside of that more, it's been really, really interesting. Being an Indian person on Juneteenth 2020. It's a really fucking weird experience because up until now, the conversation, with the Black Lives Matter movement from 2013 to now has been focused on people of color and anybody who is not white. And then now the conversation after George Floyd got murdered, the conversation really shifted to be like, we need to focus on Black Americans, like, because there is more of a gradient there of like, the things that Black Americans deal with, even compared to me. As I've said in a number of videos, the worst racism I get, one time somebody yelled a racial slur at me. One time I was in Las Vegas. And then whenever I fly internationally, it sucks. I hate flying internationally. I was not born in America. I've been an American citizen for 34 years, but I was not born here. And I come from India. And that just sends up a bunch of red flags. And it's always a hassle. And customs agents are like extra. They're really nice to my white parents. Then they get to me and they're like, who the fuck are you? And I'm like, I'm with them. Guys, come on. My passport says this. I'm coming home. Right? Like, all right, whatever. And so to be like, yeah, my experience as an Indian person, as a person who is not white and also not Black, puts me in a really funky spot. And that has been really, really eye-opening for me, and to understand more like a different level of my own privilege, but also understanding the ways in which I have been able to take responsibility, the ways in which systemic oppression has affected me, the ways in which it hasn't affected me. Like, it's been very, very clarifying. And I bring all of that up because in one of my other videos, one thing I've been thinking about a lot is this idea of how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? And what I ultimately came to the conclusion of there is systemic oppression is real, but in the abstract, surmountable. When it becomes insurmountable is when there's a gap, right? So I'm thinking about, my living in New York. Let's just say living in New York. It's not the best example, but it's the one that that I got today. The amount that I wanted to live in New York was insufficient to close the gap between how much I wanted to live in New York and how much I needed to want to live in New York in order to put up with all of the nonsense that was killing me and making me feel bad and ruining my relationships and whatever, right? That gap is very surmountable, which is why the people who live in New York and who are lifelong New Yorkers, they love New York more than anything. I'm talking about anything. Like the real New Yorkers. They're fucking cuckoo banana pants crazy about this is the greatest city in the world. There is nothing that you could ever say or do to convince me otherwise. I will put up with a mountain of lifetime garbage because I want to live in New York so fucking bad because I love it that fucking much. Right? Which is why you get that intense passion. LA is similar. It's less intense for a number of reasons. You can live a number of different ways in Los Angeles. You do not have to live in downtown. You can live in the valley. You can live in, that's also the valley. You can live in Glendale. You can live in West Hollywood or my area of Hollywood or East Hollywood or Los Feliz or Sawtell or Santa Monica or Mid-City or wherever. Like, there are so many different ways to live that, like, you don't there isn't quite that, like, how bad do you want it? There's certainly an element of that. Like, rent is not nothing here in LA, but like, it isn't turbo bad, right? So I'm just getting a little foot. So we're getting real comfy casual today. I don't know why that's the vibe. That is the vibe. We're doing comfy casual today, and we're leaning into it. And the shoes are going to be in the shop. That's just how it's going to be. So I bring all of this up because when we're talking about, let's just call it broadly, being a victim, right? I think of that classic Celine Dion song, That's the Way It Is. This song is so fucking good. I adore this song. I love the lyrics. It is so extra, like, I just love it. And I'm gonna read a couple of the lyrics, just the first verse and the pre-chorus into the chorus, because there's just a lot of feelings, and my FI is very into it. I can read your mind, and I know your story. I can see what you're going through. Yeah. It's an uphill climb, and I'm feeling sorry. Oh, right. I was doing like the dumb Canadian accent, but I was like, story and sorry don't rhyme. But in Canadian English, they sure do. Anyway, I'm feeling sorry, but I know it will come to you. Yeah. Don't surrender, because you can win in this thing called love. Here's the chorus. When you want it the most, there's no easy way out. When you're ready to go and your heart's left in doubt, don't give up on your faith. Love comes to those who believe it. And that's the way it is. Celine, why you gotta do me like that, girl? That's so rude and so aggressive. So I bring that up because it's like, that to me really illustrates the gap between, like, how much do you want it? Like, this is the amount that you need to want it to be able to sustain the bullshit over time, right? Level is up here. And I think that when you're close, right? When you're ignited and you're close, you can close that gap. Like, you can inch up how much you want it, right? But like, you can't close a gap that's that big, right? The amount that I wanted to live in New York was not even in the ballpark of how much I needed to want to live in New York to actually keep living there. Same is true for any relationship with a city, relationship with a spouse, relationship with a partner. You know, it's why so much marriage advice is, look, relationships are tough, but you just gotta fight through it, because you know it's worth it, and they're worth it to you, and you know you got to dig into those reserves of, you know, this person is really important to you, and you're building a life together and a home together, and that's what gets you through the tough times, right? It's like, you got to want it this bad, and then you got to dig into that reserve and be like, holy shit, no, you know what? Fuck it, I do want it. And when the amount that you want it and the amount that you need to want it, when they are equal, now you can fucking do anything, right? As a side note, you actually don't want it to be higher than that, though. Like, you don't want to be in a position where, you know, it's like where you want it so bad and you're willing to work for it, and the ceiling on what the other person, city, whatever can give you, the ceiling is just lower than the amount of want that you have to give. I bring up, you know, the time that I thought about living in Plano, Texas. The amount that I wanted to live in Plano, Texas, vastly eclipsed what Plano, Texas was able to do for me, right? Plano, Texas was like, this thing that you want, I cannot give it to you. I see what you want. I can give you some of these things. I can certainly give you lower cost of living. I can give you suburban stability. I can give you OI control while you figure shit out. But like, this is not a long-term solution. Like, you're not moving to Plano. Like, you're gonna move to LA after you move to Plano. So just move to LA because that's actually what you want. And the amount that I want to live in LA is exactly in line with how much I need to want to live in LA to make it work. And that's great. So when we're talking about this sort of victim mindset, the call is coming from inside the house, I mean this in a couple of ways. On the one hand, we can certainly work to change the systemic problems in our country, for sure. Whether it is police brutality, sexism at the workplace, ableism in housing developments, right? The last apartment I lived in New York, if I were in a wheelchair, I just couldn't live there because the building was not handicap accessible. So like, we could absolutely work to lower the bar of like, how bad do you want it, and being willing to put up with the bullshit, right? We do want to lower that bar. I think it is really, really unhealthy to have to want something obsessively in order to participate in it. I think that that's why New York has become a really, really unhealthy place to live, is that you have to want it more than is healthy to want anything, right? There isn't a version of, yeah, I'm willing to make some sacrifices so that I can live in New York. No. It is, I'm sacrificing everything just so I can live in New York. And that's really unhealthy. LA, the bar is a little bit lower, right? So if it's like, I want to live in New York this much, I need to want it this much. LA is like, you only need to want it this much. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I actually want it about this much. Dope. Great fit. Great match. But I use that as an example of, I definitely dealt with depression. Like, that is very much like a thing that I'm coming to understand, like, oh shit, like, I've been able to work through it with like life and experience and doing things and whatever. But like, yeah, I definitely suffer from some form of depression. Cool. And just like depression and overwhelm and social media addiction and phone addiction, like all these things. When I say that just because it's my responsibility doesn't mean the environment isn't a factor. That's really what I'm getting at. I think it's really dangerous to be like, the environment doesn't matter. The environment isn't real. It's not right. No, like Darren Brown has proven conclusively that your environment matters a fucking ton. Like, that is huge. And the signals you are sending yourself by being in a particular kind of environment, that affects everything you do, for better or for worse, right? If you are in an environment that actively rewards structure and hard work, you are going to become more structured and work harder because that's where the incentives are, right? If you're not rewarded for going above and beyond and getting a 10 out of 10, if the bar is like, oh yeah, anything over a 5, we don't give a shit, you're just not going to work as hard because the incentive isn't. It's like, oh, well, it's not to say that you can't, but like the amount of effort you have to put in to counter these environmental factors is massive. One of the things that broke me weirdly from my social media addiction was being part of the Facebook group. And it wasn't and again, it was in in a really unexpected way, because I'm an admin of the Facebook group. I'm probably the most visible admin of the Facebook group. Side note: the admins really don't do anything there. Like, we just occasionally weigh in and be like, "Hey, be nice to each other," and then whatever the conversation, people self-police. It's great. But the reason why I bring that up is that up until 2018, I'm going to say 2018, I had what I considered to be a really diverse group of peers. I was like, yeah, are you kidding? I'm friends with people in corporate circles. I'm people with musical theater actors. I'm friends with film and TV actors. I'm friends with writers. I'm friends with journalists. I'm friends with academics. I'm friends with, a bunch of different musicians, right? Professional studio musicians, orchestral musicians, classical music, like everything. And I was like, this is a really wide, like, my bubble isn't that small, right? This, like, I'm doing all the things to not get trapped into one bubble. Here's the problem. I was still operating under, like, all of those things. I bring up all those professions in particular because if you look at the top percentage of verified Twitter users, right? In order to be verified, you have to have like the top 1% of followers. It's something like that. Even though they dominate people's feeds, because that's just how social media works, like, in order to be verified, you have to have a bunch of you have to basically be an institution. You have to treat yourself like an institution. And when you look at the pie chart of who is verified, that's who it is. It's professional athletes. It's Taylor Swift. It's Amex. It's Michelle Obama. It's Karamo and John. It's the people from Queer Eye. Like, these are all people in the Tim Ferriss, Nate Silver. Those are the people who are verified. These are people in the public eye. And I was like, oh, fuck. That's been my whole cohort, which is why I was like, yes, I am getting some sort of diversity, but not really, because we all fit into a really clear umbrella of people who want a life as a public figure. And it wasn't until I got into the Facebook group for OP that I was like, wait, I'm confused. You don't care about being famous? I'm confused. You don't want national recognition for your accomplishments and all of the trappings that come with that, for better or for worse? Wait, huh? You're not constantly trying to put out content to build your brand as an institution rather than an individual? What? And it took 2 years of being around that to realize, oh, shit. I have a lot of agency when it comes to being able to leave the matrix. I don't actually have to only surround myself with people who broadly want the same thing that I do. Because for a long time I thought, I was like, oh, well, I'm not just surrounding myself with actors. I'm not just surrounding myself with, musical theater people or whatever. Like, we all want different things, like tangible things, but there's still a thing umbrella that we're all aiming for. And I was like, oh, I gotta get out of this. So in that particular instance, the call was coming from inside the house within me, in the sense that I was choosing to remain a part of this system, right? Once I recognized what it was and the ways in which it was beneficial and the ways in which it was toxic, that's when it was like, oh, shit. I have been soliciting the attention and approval and connection of this group of people. That's on me. That's what I have been seeking out. And I can either keep doing that or not, but I have to recognize that that is my doing, right? And so a big part of my responsibility was being able to go, okay, I need to remove myself from these situations that are toxic. I have to. That is my only option at this point, because I have tried to get out of each of these individual little bubbles, but I was still bumping up against the larger bubble, which was really the oppressive. I mean, they're all oppressive bubbles, but like this was an additionally oppressive bubble of like, oh fuck, wait, I'm in a competitive industry within a competitive city that's amplifying the effects of competition. So shit. Yeah, no, that's like, I have chosen year after year to remain in this situation. That is unequivocally on me. Now, I had very good reasons for that for a very long time. My career was going places. I was happy. I had a good friend, right? The fact that it started out fine or surmountable is nobody's, like, the fact that it isn't what it was, that's nobody's fault. It's just a gap want, right? It's like the amount that you needed to want to live in New York in order to live in New York used to be here. When I moved there in 2009, it was like here. I would say where LA is for me right now, right? And I was like, yeah, nope, that is how much I want to live in New York. New York's like, well, you got to want to live here this much. And I was like, yeah, no, I can make that work. Great. And then over time, the bar kept getting raised in New York slowly. And I kept trying to stretch myself up to it, right? And slow, like trying to be like, can I stretch this? Like, can I get there? Can I want it bad enough? But I would always come down to the roughly the same level. And eventually over time, the rubber band would get slack and it would start to dip. And it would actually, me trying to want it more would actually end up with me wanting it less than I did before I started to want it more. And eventually the gap just became insurmountable. And it's like, well, if I stretch anymore, my rubber band is going to break. I'm living at high tension. I cannot stretch any further. I'm out. Shoop. Decompress. Take the rubber band off. Put it onto the LA. Right? That's nobody's fault. That's not. There are flaws in systems. That is not one of them. The bar just kept getting raised in New York. And, there's just a lot of people. So when the bar keeps getting raised, when more and more people keep coming in, and it's like, all right, well, the top 10% of wanters, like you have to be in the top 10% of people who want to live in New York in order to live in New York, right? Well, like any competitive thing, if there are 200 competitors, the bar is lower for you. You're like, yeah, I need to be in the top, what do I say? There's, 200 competitors. Yeah, to be in the top 20? Sure. That's fine. When there's 100 competitors, in order to be in the top 10%, I got to be, math. The 200 competitors, I have to be in the top 20 of people. All right. Fair enough. But then, as more competitors rise, yes, the number of slots increase proportionally, but the competition to be in one of those slots is a lot harder. And I also think that if it used to be you needed to want it, you'd be in the top 10% of wanting it just again to drive this New York analogy home as far as possible, because hello NI. When I moved there, you had to be in the top 10% of wanters. And then a few years later, not only were there more people, but you had to be in the top 5% of wanters. And then the top 3% of wanters. And then the top 2% of wanters. And the top 1%. And I was like, motherfucker, I've never been above the top 7%. Like, I've never done better than that. So yeah, when the bar was that you got to want to be in the top 10% of wanders and I was at 7%, that was fucking great. The world is my oyster. And then it moves up and it's like, all right, it's getting tougher but sustainable. All right, now you got to be in the top 5% of wanters. All right, we can stretch up to 5. Yeah. And that was sort of me in like 2014, 2015, like Hamilton was gaining speed and we're doing the thing and fuck yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, all right, I can live at like the top 5%. I can be in the top 5% of wanters. Like, well, really, you got to be in the top 3%. And I'm like, I don't have that. I'm just going to be a little behind the curve and be in the top 5% of wanters, and that's going to be fine while I make my next move. And I was like, all right, now you got to be in the top 1% of wanters. And I'm like, I don't want that. That's the opposite direction we're going. And I think really what it comes down to is, and I think it's not an accident that Dave and Shan are both really keyed into this idea of responsibility, because even though Dave is single activated on his FI and Shan is double activated on her FI, for him it's a savior, for her it's a demon. Like, they really are similar in their awareness of it, regardless of how much they prioritize it. Like, as far as how much those muscles are getting worked out, like, they're not that far off, right? And so so I can see them being all in on this, like, personal responsibility. I don't need other people to tell me what to do. Like, I'm going to go inward, journey of darkness, figure it out, make it work, make it happen. Ed Milet, Bella's wedding. Whenever I try to do the Ed Milet thing, like, this just proves that I am an audio and not a fully double masculine kinesthetic. Because when that motherfucker snaps, it is like, bah, with just his fingers. And for me, I'm like, I'm doing the masculine sensory thing. There we go. Boom, we fucking got it. But that motherfucker snaps. Snap. Anyway, side note. We're talking about, right, Ed Milet and Bella's wedding, and like, that's his thing that he can key into. And personal responsibility is like, I will do whatever it takes because this thing, I want to be in Bella's wedding bad enough that I will do whatever it takes. But it comes from this internal want and this internal drive of just wanting something. And that is what will allow you to surmount, get over, not give a shit about all of the bullshit you have to go through. And so I think that to me is sort of how these two concepts hang together for me. Because it's not that the systemic problems aren't real and that they aren't objectively making my life more difficult. It's that the amount that I want the thing eclipses the difficulty that those barriers are posing, right? If you want to think of it like hurdles, if I'm running over like little kiddie training hurdles, like that the middle schoolers have to run over, like, obviously I will be fine because I can kind of clumsily get over them. Like, I don't have to be a perfect technique hurdler to get over those hurdles, right? If you were to put like high school hurdles in front of me, now I'd be like, all right, like, I'm gonna have to work at this. If this is where the hurdles are, yeah, all right, you know what? But I do want to jump over hurdles. Like, I want to be a hurdle jumper. All right, we'll fucking work at it. That's great. And then it's like Olympic hurdles, and I'm like, you know what? I just don't want it that much. I just don't care enough about being an Olympic hurdler. I just don't care. I don't give a shit. And I think that one of the biggest lessons I learned is being willing to walk away from something that isn't going to serve you. And that really is on you. Whenever I say this, I always put the caveat of like, when you have kids, it's a different story. Kids are a whole different fucking animal. But like, beyond that, if there is a toxic relationship in your life, whether it is with a person, a city, a career, an environment, cultural expectation, whatever it is, a toxic relationship with yourself, recognize that at the core, you are choosing to still be in that environment. You are choosing to stay in that relationship. You are choosing to stay in a city that's no longer good for you. You're choosing to stay in a friend group that drains you. And then you have to ask yourself, do I want to be in this group bad enough to sacrifice all of these other things? And I'll close on this. It's I don't want to throw this person under the bus because I really do believe that she is a genuinely good, great, wonderful human. She just kind of lost her way. And it's a person that I worked with, and she was like doing the corporate New York thing and kicking ass, and she had recently like lost a ton of weight using Weight Watchers, and like she was always pretty, but then she got like hot, like hottie, hot. And as a result, like, because that's what she was like, I want to be club party girl trophy wife. Like that was, she wanted it bad enough. She's like, I'll do fucking whatever it takes. I'm going to shed this weight. I'm going to start hanging around the right people. I'm going to start spending my money on fancy lunches with my girlfriends who all work these super expensive corporate jobs because I want it bad and I'll make those sacrifices. And it ended up really costing her. It cost her job. And then, since then, from what I have gathered, we obviously don't talk anymore. But like what I've gathered on social media, like she's doing well for herself. She's done a lot of growth and a lot of like recognizing the toxicity and whatever. And that's the sort of thing. Like, look, you can do anything, right? If I wanted to live in New York bad enough, if that was really important to me to just make a fuck ton of money and to live in New York, I could have done that. I could have, for sure. But I didn't want it enough. I only wanted it a certain amount, and that amount was insufficient. And so I'll leave you with this. Whatever things you're working through in your life, whether it is, and I keep saying relationship is everything. Everything is a relationship to yourself, relationship to other people, relationship to your environment, relationship to your faith, relationship to your body, to the concept of fitness. It's all, you can boil it down to this idea of relationship and interaction. And if there are relationships that are stressing you out, step one is own, like, what are you doing to exacerbate the problem, right? And then you have the agency to decide if that is a relationship worth staying in. And that's a really hard conversation to have with yourself, with other people, with the city, with things you've built your life around. And if you start by going, okay, how am I fanning the flames, right? How am I adding fuel to this fire that's making it shitty? Let me stop doing that. And then I'll be able to see, oh, I really was making this so much worse than it had to be. We're good. Or you may come to the conclusion of, wow, even with me not fanning the flames, I still can't fucking deal with this. Like, I'm owning my shit. I'm doing the work, and it's not getting better. Like, me adding fuel to the fire made it worse, but me not adding fuel, it's still bad and insurmountable. Great. That is now on you again to decide what you need to do about that over a period of time. Maybe don't flip a switch. Maybe don't go to Mars without telling anybody. But like, those are concrete steps that you can and should start to make for yourself in your life. Because at the end of the day, the call is coming from inside the house. And even if it isn't always calling from inside the house, you're the one who has to answer the phone. All right, that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.